Welcome everyone to day 3 of the first ever virtual funeral unconference. We have a great panel today to talk all things technology and marketing, which right now is at the forefront in our profession. So I'm going to kind of take a back seat and be a panelist today. And we've got my esteemed co-partner of Funeral Nation, Jeff, the funeral commander Harbeson, is going to be our moderator. So, Commander, take it away.
Hey, well, thank you. And hello to everyone out there in the funeral world. Thank you for tuning in today. We've got a great panel of guests. And this subject is something that I believe is one of the more important segments of what we're doing today. It's the technology and how to reach people. And we certainly have 4 experts here that within our profession, I don't believe there's anyone who knows anymore. So we're going to change the format just a little bit today, whereas we'll have all 4 panelists. I'll ask each of them a single question and move to the next panelist. So we should have some great discussion. So let's launch this thing by starting with John Heald. If you'll kick this off, introduce yourself, and then we'll move to Curtis.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff, and thanks, Ryan, for putting this on. It's a great opportunity, and honored to be amongst some of the great minds here in funeral service. So that said, I'm located in Boston. I am a funeral director. I work at Legacy.com. I've been described as our CEO as the registered funeral director on staff within Legacy. So that being said, didn't grow up in the business, grew up around it. But for those of you that don't know Legacy, it's technically the global leader in online obituaries. Gets about 40 million monthly unique visitors, which is an insane amount of traffic. Top 50 website in the U.S. But I think as it relates to funeral homes, we've got an extremely powerful marketing platform that, our goal at the end of the day is to drive awareness, traffic, insights, revenue, and a whole lot more for funeral homes, but do it at a parallel that's probably unmatched in this profession. So the one thing I like about what Ryan and Tony said at the beginning of this was controlling the narrative. And it's our goal this year, 2020, for Legacy to do exactly that. And excited to have opportunities like this today.
Well, that's great. And John, I had to say it, but we could call you John Legend. You are a legend in this business. You've been pretty much around every side of this profession. So your voice and your work means a lot for being here. So Curtis, you're next up. If you'll introduce yourself, please, sir.
Yeah, I am Curtis Hong. I'm the founder and CEO of Tukios, and we're an online tribute video creation software. And it's completely web-based, so you can create and edit tribute videos from anywhere where you've got an internet connection and a computer or a mobile device. And that kind of, in today's world became crazy valuable a few weeks ago as, arrangement conferences changed and, Tukios became like the virtual video creation software, because we've got these cool family collaboration tools where you can just send a link to the family, let them upload the pictures, let them upload home videos, let them put them in the order they want, which is kind of a nice little therapeutic exercise for them. And then from there, the funeral director controls themes, music, publishing it to their website. If they're having a service at this point, they can play it there. But we're seeing a lot of changes there, how that's going. But that's we're kind of we try to be a one-trick pony and do it best to do it better than everybody else. So we are the tribute video company. So
excellent. Well, thank you for being here. And our next up is Welton Hong. I'm going to call him the King of Ring. He's been captioned there. But anyway, Welton, will you please introduce yourself and your company, please?
Thank you, Jeff. My name is Welton Hong with Ring Marketing, and we specialize in helping funeral homes generate more at-need calls via search engine marketing, help them update their website for conversions, and help them out with online reputation. But just like Ryan, I love educating the funeral industry, being out there speaking a lot, just like Ryan. Recording a lot of videos. I just love to educate. So it's just my passion. So that's why it's very humbling to be here to speak to all of you.
It's excellent. Well, thank you for being here. And finally, last but not least, is my co-partner, buddy. We've done this a long time together. Ryan, please introduce yourself and your company.
Yeah, thank you, Jeff, for moderating today. I'm Ryan Thogmartin, CEO of ConnectingDirectors.com and Disrupt Media, also PriceMyFuneral.com, Death Care Jobs, and co-host with Jeff on Funeral Nation web show. You know, like Welton said, I love to educate. I think our specialty with funeral homes is helping funeral homes build relationships with their communities through online engagement. This is a relationship-driven business, and when we can establish deep-seated relationships with the community, we can drive conversation and ultimately drive pre-need through social media marketing. And like Curtis said, we're a one-trick pony as well with social media. We don't do Google AdWords. That's Welton's arena, and we focus solely on social marketing. And it's fun. It changes every single day. It's at the forefront of kind of the landscape of the season that we're in the profession, and being able to communicate and get information out to consumers. So we're really leaning in to help funeral homes understand the platforms, where to engage, how to engage, and how to put out that content that engages the consumer in a way that's valuable and builds a relationship. So I'm excited that we were able to throw this unconference together in about 7 days, and it's worked well so far. Thank you to the almost 1,000 people that have registered for the event. It's been fun. I think this has been 3 days of some of the most valuable conversation that's available in the profession right now. Very real time for the season we're in, and very applicable to every funeral home and cemetery out there. So I appreciate everyone that's on the call today or on the webinar today, sharing about your companies and the solutions that you have to help move the profession forward.
Excellent. Well, thank you all of you for being here again. This is what I consider A+ lineup of understanding technology within our business. So I'm going to start off with Curtis, because Curtis, right now live streaming is a hot button. You have a history with live streaming for funerals prior to Tukios. What are your thoughts on how a funeral home should use live streaming for a solution today?
Yeah, this is obviously like one of the hottest topics right now in technology, right? It's something that we're having phone calls about it every hour, or we've been involved in some webinars and have another one on Friday about it. So yeah, but prior to Tukios, I had a business called funeralrecording.com, and we did live streaming of services. And a few years ago, we sold the webcasting portion of that business away to another company, actually to Funeral View is what they're called now, out of Ohio. And it was really just surrounding us trying to focus on one thing and just be best at one thing. And we had, a lot more clients on the tribute video side. Webcasting at the time really wasn't something we saw like a ton of funeral homes adopting. 5 years ago, when, it was like when we were at our peak with just, not very many, but a few hundred clients was all, we saw that it really was a greater need there in the Jewish funeral market, because there's like a 48-hour death to burial requirement. And so people didn't have time to travel now. And so it was almost like they did it out of need. And today we've got that need because people can't travel and people can't hold funeral services. And so when it comes to live streaming, like some of the messages I've been sharing with people as they've been asking us about it is, there's obviously several options. And some of these options have even come up, I think, even in the Monday's conversation at Unconference. Like if you're watching this on Facebook Live, that's an option. If you're watching, like if you used YouTube Live, that's another option, right? The issues with those two or any other consumer product like that would be where I would just provide advice there, is that you're not maybe going to get the level of support if you have questions, especially regarding hardware. That's kind of where it becomes a challenge. If you're using your phone, it's usually going to be user-friendly enough that's not going to be a problem. But at the same time, with the consumer products like that, you also will hit music licensing issues, right? YouTube and Facebook have audio fingerprinting. They're going to listen. And if they hear a mainstream song, they're going to mute this thing. And so that could affect your live stream, right? And you don't want the live stream to go down. So then you could look at some of the industry providers like Funeral View, One Room, TributeCast, SympathyNet. There's several there that are providing specific to the industry, where you are going to have the support. They're going to help you with the hardware. Feature sets are going to be a little bit different, right? So it really, like, in my mind, as I'm providing like advice on that, it's kind of, what are you, there's several options and they're all good, right? So you can go consumer, you can go industry specific. If you can't hold a memorial service at all, we did a video last week on Zoom where we kind of did a pretend funeral, and it just like this, right? Where you would invite the family to a Zoom meeting and just record it like Ryan's recording this one, and then you can post that to your website and stream it. Now, where Tukios has been heavily involved in this specifically in the last week is not on the live streaming side, but on just the funeral streaming side, getting it online, but not live, right? And we're seeing a lot of funeral homes doing that. It's actually really cool. There's a few that I've been like sucked into, like where I see like, okay, another, there's several funeral service recordings being uploaded right now, and then one gets completed and I click in to view it. And the next thing I know, 30 minutes have gone by and I've watched somebody's funeral. And it's just like the weirdest thing. But it's like some of them are pretty captivating, and especially if I'm in Utah and it's been cloudy and rainy, and when I log in and watch a funeral at a graveside in Florida where it's nice and sunny, the wind's blowing, like it kind of just I stay there. And so anyway, my suggestion there is when we were doing live streaming, we saw the statistics from Google Analytics and stuff to see that the majority of viewers were not watching live. That could totally be different today because I'm not tracking it anymore and people are working from home. And we did, on a support side, see that a lot of people weren't able to log into a live stream. The firewall at work would block a live video stream. And so because of that, maybe that's why it was slower. I don't know. But you did get the majority of views after the fact. So when funeral homes are calling us saying, I got a funeral this afternoon, I want to get this on the internet because only 10 people can come, what can I do? We're just saying, record it with your phone, record it with an iPad, record it with a camera. You've got recording equipment. Everybody does at this point, right? You got it in your pocket. And so record the service and then just upload it to Tukios like you would do a normal video. And then it's integrated with your website. It's playing on your website right inside the obituary. People can access it. You can now productize it if you want to burn a DVD of it to give to the family or put it on a flash drive, or the different products we have, video books, things like that. You can now productize that service as well. And so those are kind of like, when it comes to live streaming, I feel like there's a few options.
Sure.
But when if you're not going to do it live, then that's where Tukios can come in and allow you to get that video online really easily without any stress of like, is it working? Is it live? The whole thing.
Excellent. Well, thank you. For the audience and for our panelists, imagine if this particular situation would have taken place 25 years ago.
Yeah.
None of this would be possible. So it's interesting that some of you have been in this business for some time, and we're positioned for such a time as this in order to respond. I want to keep along the same line, and Ryan, if you're available, today more than ever, the importance of social media and technology in the funeral ecosystem, kind of following along with Curtis opened up with live streaming and videoing. What's your thoughts about social media and what we're doing today?
Well, I think that, for one, talking about live streaming, the amount of live streams that are happening now, we had a call yesterday through our agency partnership with Facebook to look at some of the consumer trends over the course of the last month that we've kind of been in this pandemic. Like the online usage of Facebook has skyrocketed, live streaming has skyrocketed. Facebook's been forced to roll out new options and better tools to be able to manage those live streams, whether you're a brand or just a consumer through a profile. So I completely agree with Curtis on a great option is to just record the service and get it up after the fact if you don't have the data connection or Wi-Fi connection to have a good live stream. But we've been thrusted into, like, the technology conversation has gone from we ignored it to now it's at the forefront. And I think I said on day one of the conference that I really feel like as a profession we've had to skip ahead 5 years in the way that we use technology in the last couple of weeks. And so from a social media standpoint, right now, the only direct connection funeral homes have to consumers in their community to update them on gathering restrictions, how they're going to be doing virtual arrangements, how they can meet families. Like, to be able to get that information out, social is the only way that they've got to do it. And you know, we've helped a lot of funeral homes that are not clients of ours through this time of just how to create a Facebook page, creating a Facebook page for them, showing them how to post, showing how to go live. Like, it's been kind of it's been neat to see how the profession has come together in this time around technology. I mean, we've even partnered with some of what would be considered competitors to help out, you know, just funeral homes in need. So, you know, the conversation's at the forefront, and right now is there's no better time for funeral homes to invest in being present on social media and being able to connect with the consumer. You know, we had one client where, you know, 2 weeks ago we put out a statement. They were one of the first states to have restrictions on some of the gatherings, and then we have a client in Washington, which was one of the first states to ban gatherings altogether. And just being able to navigate those conversations where they put out a post on their Facebook page through a simple video or text, or video and text, and, you know, 10,000 people reached in a matter of hours because the information needs to be gathered and needs to be digested. So it's a great way to stay out in front of this and have conversations with the consumer. And we've also seen a heightened increase in private messages through funeral home Facebook pages around grief support, around, you know, just questions about, can I come to a viewing, positive affirmations that are being sent to funeral homes, like funeral homes being able to serve in a capacity where they probably would have had a one-on-one need conversation with somebody, but now it's happening through a chat. You know, I'm a believer that technology will never be able to fully replace sitting knee to knee, handshake to handshake with somebody. You know, but right now it's filling the void and it's becoming second nature. You know, if you think the consumer was engaged in technology prior to this, now it is a fabric of every single day. We're living on our devices. You know, my kids are homeschooled, so they haven't got the I don't know if this is the right word, but they haven't received the benefit of the public school system being closed down. So we've been a little lax in letting them start their day, you know, later and sleep in and things of that nature. But they've spent an inordinate amount of time on TikTok. And, you know, for funeral homes, TikTok isn't a network that they should be on really to engage, but just seeing how 12 and 13-year-old have stayed connected through videos and trends and things that are happening. Like, it's amazing to me how quickly we adapt and change as a society. And we went from using social all the time to living on it practically now, and funeral homes have to be a part of that conversation. And a lot of the questions that we've gotten asked by funeral homes that are clients of ours and some that are not, like, how do we navigate the pre-need conversation in a landscape where we're afraid of negative blowback? And so, you know, we helped some clients craft some responses that are, you know, a funeral home is a business just like any other business, and they've got to be able to stay visible. Yes, that, you know, that they're kind of the last line of defense in this virus, but at the end of the day, they've got to serve their communities to the best of their ability. And that doesn't mean staying dark and turning off the lights and going completely non-existent online. That's not what the consumer needs. Right now, the consumer is thinking about their mortality more so than probably we ever have in the majority of our lifetime. And the funeral home has to be present in those conversations and be accessible and be available. And we're seeing a lot of that through private messages and using Messenger from consumer to a funeral home page. So, you know, I said this yesterday, but I think that the next pandemic that we face as a profession is going to be a silent pandemic, and it's going to be around grief and kind of just mental health of, you know, people are being forced to have direct burials and direct cremations where they're not getting the closure of a service. And I think the opportunity right now for the profession to really be able to talk about the value of a funeral service and the value of a gathering, that is at the forefront. And we're going to see families that are going to have stricken grief 6 months from now because they haven't adequately dealt with their grief at the time of death because they weren't able to have the gathering. They weren't able to have the condolences. I got to attend We had a very, very close family friend that passed away last week. And we had, in Ohio, you can have a gathering at the graveside of more than 10 people as long as you are respecting social distancing. So the entire funeral took place at the graveside. It was cold, it was damp, it was muddy. It was a completely different type of funeral that I've ever experienced. I've never gone to a funeral where I couldn't hug the widow or the family that had lost someone. And so just that awkward dynamic is creating different grief problems that we're going to have to address later. And I think it's an opportunity now more than ever for funeral homes to kind of be at the forefront and leading those conversations, because if we don't, somebody else is going to, and it's not always going to be a positive experience for the consumer. So technology and social is putting us at the forefront of that, and funeral homes that can lean into that opportunity and take their responsibility to serve. And now we're just using a different platform to dominantly do it, where we would have extended a handshake or a hug. Now we're extending a private message and things that way. So it's definitely been different.
Yeah, to say the least. I think, John, you wanted to make a comment on Ryan's remarks.
Yeah, absolutely. It was interesting last week. Actually, we were talking about it earlier. A lot of companies are trying to do different things and going live and just getting the word out. And Curtis and Tukios have this thing called just raw conversation. And so we got on last week, I think 3 or 4 other guys that work at Tukios, myself, and Curtis challenged us to think, as if we're funeral homes, what could we do differently in the world that we're living in that could provide a meaningful and valuable experience to the families that are being served. So one of the ways in which she did it was to ask each of us, what's one of the best memories of someone you lost? So here we are, just like this today on Zoom. And each one of us went through one of those special memories that was really, really important. And then I took a step back and I said, guys, you know what we just had here? We just had a virtual wake. Now, if I could have done this with my 5 siblings, who each have a different memory of our dad that we shared, and it's live, it's online, that I could now take that and essentially have a video condolence or a eulogy that could reside on the funeral home obituary or everywhere else out. I think it's extremely powerful, and that we're kind of being forced to do this, but it's a tremendous medium in which to do that. So the only other thing I would add to that is that, I think we're in a world where you want to get the word out to as many people as possible. And, unfortunately, I think there's this perception of just having that content reside on your funeral home website is enough. And I think Welton could expand upon that greatly, but the idea of getting this out to as many channels that will take it is probably the number one priority that a funeral home should look at. So thanks for
Agree with you. Yeah, thanks for that comment, and what a great idea of meeting together and an example. And so I want to switch to Welton. Welton, you're on a little bit different a segment, but the bottom line is we're reaching folks. Why is search engine marketing a great way to target families and let them know that you're available to help them?
Right. So a good, interesting analogy is, let's say we're back in 1990. Let's say you have a leaky roof. So 30 years ago, you might call up your friend, neighbors, and see, hey, do you know a roofer nearby? Or back then, 30 years ago, most homeowners, they grab that thick print yellow pages. They flip to R. The one with the yellow cover?
Oh, the fire starters when you're camping. I got it. Okay.
Yes. Right. You flip to R and you're looking at a bunch of ads with roofers. We were price shoppers back then already, right? We're gauging which ad is better, and we started calling them, and we're price shoppers already. But present day, the same scenario, if you have a leaky roof, you grab this device. You might type in roofers near me. If I'm Vegas, I'll type in Las Vegas funeral home, Las Vegas roofers. So how search is very much parallel is how Yellow Pages work. It's targeting those who are already problem aware. So more pertaining to funeral industry, if they do not know a funeral home nearby, whether it's imminent needs or at needs, they will grab this device first. They might type in funeral homes near me, cremation service near me, Las Vegas cremation, Las Vegas funeral homes. And you want to make sure you're found somewhere on the first page of Google.
Right.
But more pertaining to now, to present day, I think a lot of people, they're just Googling your brand name, right? Let's say they already know ABC Funeral Home. They want to see, are they still open or not? So I will say, like a big advice right now is most consumers are really wondering, is this business open? Is this business not open right now? So make sure on Google itself, there's something called Google Post. And you can go on Google Post, and there's a big COVID-19 button. You click there, and you put your message on there. That way, whenever somebody Googles you, right, from this device, doesn't matter which device, it will let families know whether you're open or not, or, right? And their big thing here is, of course, your website has to, ideally, there should be a pop-up right now, letting families know that you're still open right now.
Excellent. We do have a couple of questions, but I'm going to get to John along our series. So as you're watching, I've got two to ask of the panel in just a moment. John, talk about one of the benefits that you share with Legacy Pro is Funeral Home Directory and Leads, which kind of backs along with Welton. Will you speak on that for just a moment, please?
Yeah, sure. So at the beginning, I had mentioned that, Legacy is a top 50 website in the US, and it's got over 40 million monthly unique visitors. So it's real. And it's our job as a company to help funeral professions with that traffic. So one of the ways in which we're doing is that we've just relaunched our Funeral Home Directory. And I do watch every single video Welton puts out. I read the books, but if there's anything about that, it's about being found. And we have 4 million people a month that go to our directory for funeral homes and obituary related information. So with the launch of this directory, I would strongly encourage any funeral home to go to legacy.com, hit funeral homes, claim your listing. So with that traffic, what can we do as a company that can we engage those consumers who either may be thinking about the benefits of planning ahead, or might even quite honestly have an at-need arrangement. So the way we describe our new directory is that if we can become the Yelp for funeral service, that's a big kind of, big ask. But I think with our traffic and the funeral homes that can engage, own their content, create really meaningful pages, that we've got an opportunity to, again, go back to driving insights, traffic, leads, and a whole lot more for the funeral homes that want to engage. So it's there, and good or bad, we have what a lot of people in the internet space want, which is traffic. And I don't mean that to be egotistical or anything. It's just, we have it. So it's on Legacy's shoulders to make sure that if we do, what can we do to get it back to the funeral home?
Gotcha. That makes a lot of sense. Well done. So guys, we went through the first round of questions. I'm going to read one that from Joe Prey. Hey, Joe, how are you? Good to see you. Joe asks, how should we set up an invitation for family and friends to attend virtual wake? Is there a program or app that can help us do that rather than simply having folks email their information to one of our staff members? Anyone can answer the question.
Well, I think, go ahead, John.
Go ahead, Brian. Well, I started off with just this epiphany that we had with Curtis and his team, that Zoom was this powerful medium. I'm not 100% sure. There's some discussions around privacy and Zoom and so forth, but I would think a virtual wake could be held with your phone and ask each family member to do a recording and somehow get that back over to you. But I'm going to let Ryan and the other experts chime in.
I was just going to throw in the Zoom conversation. We helped a client set this up where they just set up a webinar in Zoom and sent out the link to the family, and the family distributed who they wanted to attend, and that person could register, and then they get the link to attend, so it could still be private. The other option is doing like a Skype call or something along those lines, but we have found Zoom to be very easy if you don't already have a solution to stream at the funeral home privately through your website. That Zoom setting up a webinar and then giving the invite link to the family, and then they invite who they want to invite, is a great way to keep it private, and then everyone can register, and you have data when people register as well, that could be valuable.
Yeah, I think Ryan, you just answered a question from Hillary about sending out the recommended passcodes, etc. So well done.
And I have another to Hillary's question of doing virtual grief support. One, Zoom could be one. Two, is setting up a private Facebook group that is connected to your Facebook page that is just grief support, where you can direct people from your Facebook page to join that private group, which they would have to ask to join, and then you could put them into that group. And that's a great way to offer support grief-wise to families that you didn't serve in your community that don't have that availability through the funeral home that they used. Just making those resources available through a private Facebook group is another option as well.
Excellent. And thank you, everybody, for asking questions and sending those in. We're going to go back to our panelists now for topics. Ryan, I'm going to go back to you. Why relationship marketing is key? Do we know that today and experiencing those results?
Well, 80% of funeral home business is relationship driven. So if relationships are what bring a consumer to a funeral home, and I always use the data collected through NFDA through their consumer survey, 90.4% of consumers shop 0 to 1 funeral home when making arrangements. The top 2 reasons they made the choice that they did were proximity to the funeral home and relationship they had with that funeral home. So essentially, if we can create content that builds a relationship, and we're learning more now so than ever that we can build relationships through virtual engagements and content. We've got thousands of funeral homes and funeral directors and people in the profession that have joined these live streams that we have relationships with, but only through video or text. We've never actually met in person. So it's the same type of relationship that you're building with the community. And so if 80% of funeral home business is relationship driven, we rarely talk about the relationship that's established through marketing. We talk a lot about leads and brand awareness and pre-need, but we rarely talk about establishing the relationship, which is the driver of all those things. And that's, I'm not a big believer in always creating the technology. Like Facebook created a great platform that was established to build relationships and people engage. I'm fine to just leverage that to do what its intent was. And if we do that correctly, we build relationships and we build conversation, and given the data, if you can do that, there's a 90% chance that family is going to choose your funeral home based on that relationship that was established.
That's true. And that's a great answer. And it somewhat leads into a question for you, Welton, which, we have the relationship, just like using Amazon. Believe it or not, I have a relationship with Amazon just from my own app. They've reached to me, I've joined, so therefore I see what's going on. But another segment of that too are the reviews, which are essential, because I read the reviews on everything that I do. Of course, I read the good ones and the bad ones and land somewhere in the middle. So Welton, will you mind speaking to that, please?
Yeah, the reviews are obviously getting more and more critical these days. And to me, it's one of those unfair advantage a funeral home can have these days. Again, it's an undecided family. They will check out your online reviews because they do not know who you are. And let's say you have a lot of good positive reviews on Google, at least it will give them an urge to call you. When they call you, they're pre-framed that you're legit funeral home. Versus if they haven't done a whole lot of homework, when they call you, they start price shopping a lot. But it's so easy to check out your online reputation these days. Very often, I totally agree with Ryan that a lot of these people already know the funeral home. So they will Google ABC funeral home on Google. Simply just look up their phone number, simply just to find out their website. But on the right-hand side, whenever you Google a business name, Google reviews shows up. There's no way to hide. There's literally no way you can hide. Also, along with Google reviews, Facebook reviews shows up on first page of Google, along with sometimes Yelp reviews, and of course, Legacy shows up all the time as well, right? But again, is even as a neighbor or they already have a lot of relationship with that funeral home, they're simply just looking up your phone number. Now, all these reviews either can help you a lot or work against you. So I'm huge on you got to have a lot of positive reviews.
I got you. And it's interesting because the segues that we're going here with Ryan relationships, the relationships turned into reviews, which build more relationships.
Exactly.
But all of that is market data. And so, John, I'm going to shoot to you. Why is market data so important?
Yeah, it's interesting in the conversations we've had with funeral homes through the years, and what are some of their pain points? What are they doing to track themselves against their competitors? Everyone seems to be doing it in one form or another. Typically, by tracking their competitors, they've got someone on staff that's physically going or waking up every morning or month end and going to the websites to see how many calls they're doing. And it's valuable data to that particular owner or the business just to give them a quick litmus test as to how they are stacked up against their competitors. So, we've got a solution that does provide that to the funeral homes that are either doing that manually, and or if they're not, do they just want a quick snapshot of what's happening in their particular landscape? So important data, not so much to us, but I think in terms of the funeral homes who are trying to understand their landscape, it's very valuable.
I agree. Again, it really doesn't make any sense if you're reaching out just to be reaching out, if you're not asking your relationship to have reviews and then reviewing the data and market that's driven in. What are they telling you as a provider that they're looking for, right? So that's right on line. Thank you. Curtis, I'm going to bounce back to you and get a little more personal into the business side. How's that changed your operations there at Tukios since the shutdown, and how are those changes having an effect on videos and personalization?
Yeah, I'll answer. Let me just give a shout out to Jeff though. You're doing an awesome job here because there's a lot of buzz going on in the comments, the chat, the Q&A, and all the questions we had for talking points. So great job, just kind of navigating all this.
Well, thank you. I'll take that. It's
cool
early in the morning out here in Phoenix, by the way. So
yeah,
you caught me at a good time.
That's right. You guys don't do daylight savings, so yeah. So what changes we've seen on the personalization side? It's been interesting for sure. Definitely numbers are down, right? We're seeing less videos created. There's no question there, and that's not just that's not just Tukios. We've talked to other personalization companies in the industry. Everyone's seeing the same thing. And so when I start to dive in to those actual numbers and see, okay, what's going on here? It seems like I don't feel like I've really got a grasp on the right answer yet, but it seems like some funeral homes are stepping up right now and saying even though there's not a service, even though all this stuff is changing, we still want to be the experts on grief. We still want to be the one facilitating this whole thing. And so their numbers have not been affected. They're still doing register books. And I heard, I think it was on Monday, we heard from Jay Dodds talking about people calling in to sign a register book virtually and things like that, right? So some funeral homes I feel are stepping up and still continuing that personalization to kind of keep themselves at the forefront of facilitating this online virtual gathering. We had, one funeral home this week, a new user to Tukios, which I thought was just really cool. They went back, I guess, probably because I haven't had a personal conversation with them. I'm just kind of jumping to a conclusion, but they made 100 videos on Monday.
Wow.
That's really, really, really unusual, right? And but they went back and they created videos for all these obituaries they had on their website, because it's Welton mentioned something earlier about search right now being a little busier. Maybe that was before we started recording, but search, because people are at home and they're in front of their computers, they're searching. They're landing on the funeral home's website, especially because they're wondering who's died from COVID. And so having rich media content on your obit is really, really valuable. We're seeing, we've known this for years since we've been embedded into funeral home obituaries, that, someone comes to your website, they go to the obit, they may spend 45 seconds there on average. You can check your Google Analytics to see about what yours are. But if there's a video on there, it increases it by 5 or 6x. They'll stay there for five minutes, and that's with your logo in front of their eyes, for an extra 4 or 5 minutes where they wouldn't have spent there. So rich media content right now, I feel is a big deal when people are at home and they're looking for something, because to Alan Wolfeld's point in his article last week, like you can't put pause on grief, right? You can't like hit the pause button on grief, and so they're needing something. And so what I'm getting at is I don't know if like the dips we're seeing from some funeral homes, some they've gone from like 100 to 10. I mean, just like they've just tanked on personalization products. Where others have held strong, and they're not, and it's not necessarily that they're in a region where the virus isn't as like effective right now. It's kind of all over the map. So we're still trying to like, take all these numbers and this data and say like, what's actually happening here? But the short answer is like, for sure, we're seeing the personalization slow down. Some of the funeral homes I have talked to that did slow said, well, we're delaying services. And I think that's fine. Like you can do the personalization that pulls in, but I think it should still do something now if you can.
Yeah, no, and I would just add to that we're no different in terms of obit volume going down. Not only placement in newspapers, but I selfishly think about the obit, and this is probably one of the greatest opportunities for funeral service at large to take a little different look at the obit. I mean, there is such an opportunity to either start to write great life stories and or allow someone in the family to be that person to write that, so that they can tell that story, provide them the opportunity to write things that they perhaps wouldn't have due to time restrictions, deadlines, so forth and so on, so that there can be extremely rich, well-written obits out there, either done by the funeral home or provided by the funeral home to the family to do it. Then get it on the funeral home website, get it on Facebook, get it on Legacy, get the Tukios video up there, and just spread the word.
Yeah. What both of you just shared is a golden opportunity that, again, if things have slowed down, then take the time to put these videos together for the family, because then, again, people are sitting at home. This is their only way that they're paying attention to the whole world, or using a computer, as I am at this point, which transcends, it's just great our conversation way is flowing. Welton, how important is it to have a mobile-friendly site right now?
So more than 50% of the searches nationwide, not just the death care, but nationwide, any type of search terms, it's already on this device. So more than 50% of searches are on mobile platform already. So Google took this very, very seriously. So Google calls this mobile first. So Google already changed all of its ranking on Google. It's indexing the mobile version of your site, not the desktop version of your site. So if your website, first of all, is not mobile friendly, then of course your ranking will be less. But from my point of view, since they're all on this little tiny device, you got to make sure when they go on there, it's so easy to find information, especially your phone number. Has to be so easy to find your phone number. Ideally, should be right at the top. They can just tap it and call you. Ideally, should be locked, so they can just tap it. Right? So overall, mobile user experience is so critical these days. Even me, I have to force myself to audit websites from this device because I'm at work all the time. I have a large monitor, but even me, I have to force myself to be using this device all the time.
And I think that, it's interesting because, again, people are out of their offices, yet they're at home. They're using a laptop more than likely. It'll be interesting as we move out of this to see some of that data is how have we really communicated and how have we stayed in touch with the devices that are there. I'm sure there's some data in there, Welton. You probably have that on one of those sticky notes back there, which is pretty interesting. I've got sticky note stories, but those are really cool. I'm going to jump back to Ryan and ask a question, which is interesting today because I'm answering live questions. All of you guys are. We're doing it back not only on video, but also the chat. And nothing is automated. This is live. This is actually reacting to the market as we go. So Ryan, why is social automation a failure?
Well, if in this time period over the last 3 weeks, if you had your social media on some sort of autopilot or just generic grief and inspirational content that's being sent out automatically, maybe you pick content at the beginning of the month and then automate it through the rest of the month, you've completely missed the opportunity to provide valuable real-time engagement with your community. And social media, the best analogy I could give is, what if you automated the arrangement process when a family came in, regardless of the conversation that they wanted to have, regardless of the questions that they asked, you just automated it and replied in a way that was completely uniform and didn't deviate. What type of arrangement experience would that family have? That's the same type of experience they're going to have through social. And, you know, when you look at social media and we talk about relationships, the value of social media is the ability to build a relationship. When have you ever automated a relationship conversation where it ended in a relationship? So if we automate that content, it's very generic, and it's content that any funeral home anywhere in the world or in the country could post the same thing. And it's nothing specific to your firm. It's not moving the family from, that's a nice grief and inspirational post, to this is the funeral home I want my family to use. A personal interaction and content that's organic to your firm and only your firm, who you are, what you do, how you do it better than anybody else. That's the content that's going to move the conversation forward. And so if you automated your social media, then you've missed the opportunity to have a lot of those connections, because it's just, regardless of what's happening outside and around, it's just the same content on repeat going out on your page.
Agreed, and that gets ignored. You know, John, we're talking now about reaching people, and from a legacy pro position, what do you have that's a local ad opportunity, or can you speak to that, please?
I can, but I actually maybe don't want to. And I say that because during like our little pre-call,
Right.
You know, we were just talking about media and advertising buys in general, and maybe like Tukios videos, obit volume, it's going down. If you watch any business related show, it's media sales are in the tank. But I would only challenge that because Welton also pointed out the amount of people online right now is significantly greater. It's probably going to be at peaks for the longest time we've ever seen. So from that perspective, those who are doing things digitally, or they're doing commercial buys or radio, look at what that portfolio looks like, and then see what, you know, your digital opportunities may be, so that your brand is out there. You're either able to drive leads, educate. There's a number of opportunities. We happen to have, you know, a unit available in markets that provides exclusivity, but I don't want to make this promotional. I just encourage those that are looking at marketing to think about it and where they're spending, because digital, I mean, there are more and more people just sitting there, browsing funeral homes, looking at obits, trying to get information. So again, tremendous opportunity in terms of time.
I got you.
Jeff,
Go
I
ahead.
just want to address that real quick about the time spent online. I'm looking at, through our agency partnership with Facebook, some data they sent us yesterday. There's been a 44% increase of people going online while shelter in place and through this pandemic. And there's been a 39% increase in online streaming during this time period. So to Curtis's point of visual content and being able to have it streamed and capture that attention, the increase is insanity. And there's been a 35% increase in the use of social media since January through this pandemic.
That's remarkable, considering the depth and volume of people that are using it. One thing I brought up yesterday that I was able to find some numbers shared with me from the CDC. Actually, week 10, which is last week in March, the death rate in the United States was down about 18%. And so, interesting as it is, that's something for us to monitor. As we're seeing the rise of the coronavirus's death, which is all the headline, what we don't see is the reduction of other deaths, because we're not having accidents at work sites or car accidents because people are home. I don't know if that's an answer, but we also are not seeing a spread of the regular flu, right? So this will be interesting for us to navigate through this. It's all about market data. Curtis, I'm going to reach out to you. And one of the things, questions that you wanted to address is coronavirus is forcing funeral homes to prove they're relevant and need to speed up change to a society that's looking more Funerals. So the point being, and it'll lead to Ryan, you next about pre-need marketing. If you're not showing why you're relevant today, tomorrow could be a real nightmare. So Curtis, will you address that, please?
Yeah, so this is something we've been thinking about as we've just been watching how these changes have taken place and how online gatherings are changing, and or there's not personalization, and just thinking like, okay, well, what negative effects could that possibly have, right? And I think so. And then just it so happens that we've had some conversations with family members over the last week, and this is that's not someone we would normally talk to. We're typically talking to funeral homes. But we're seeing an uptick in people coming to going online and saying, how do I make a funeral slideshow video? And then they find us. We don't try to market to the end consumer ever. We're always marketing directly to the funeral home. We have these family members coming in, finding the website. They'll go in on Tukios, they'll create an account, they'll create a video. And then, so we actually had like some of our guys call them and say, hey, what's going on here? And they said, well, we're going through this grief and the funeral home isn't offering us to do anything. Like there's no personalization. And so this is kind of the big thought in my mind is what does it look like on the other end of this tunnel? If this is going to be as bad as some of the experts say it's going to be, then all of us are going to experience a death, right, of someone we know probably over the next few months. And if that's the case, then everyone's going to have some sort of experience. Well, not everyone, you know what I mean? Like a lot of people are going to have some sort of experience with a funeral home
right
over the next few months. And if that's the case, it's like, what are they seeing from you? Are you being the one that's facilitating and being the expert and actually helping them? Or are you kind of stepping back and saying, we're the method of disposition right now because we can't do anything else in our minds? Then they go to that DIY. They start doing it themselves. They start Googling, finding that they can design stationery on Etsy, or they can buy urns from Amazon. And they start saying okay, well, that's how you do it because the funeral director didn't really guide me down a typical path, or adapt to guide me down the new normal path, which is what I think the funeral directors need to be doing, right? Because so the worry is 6 months from now, 7 months from now, things are all back to normal, things are good, and somebody experiences a death, and they say, well, last time I did everything myself, and it went well. And I use the funeral home for the method of disposition. And so that's where they're relevant, is just that piece. And so I don't know that's me just making some sort of maybe crazy prophecy, but it's also something where I'm thinking is that viable? Is that a viable idea? I kind of think it is. I think that if everyone's having these experiences with funeral homes and that's the experience they're getting, because again, we talked, the families just recently and say, what's going on? Well, funeral home didn't offer this to me. So I just had to go on and figure it out myself because I needed to do something. I'm grieving. I need something. I need some sort of takeaway from this. And so that's my concern is they got to be relevant, and they can be so relevant with today's technology.
It's true. And the only way we can be relevant now is literally online and pushing that information out. And so, Ryan, a question for you along those lines is, we shouldn't stop pre-need marketing. What would you suggest for a firm to do now?
Well, this is a can of worms, but there was a question on here about negative comments when consumers see a funeral home ad. So, immediately 3 weeks ago, we went to our clients running direct pre-need lead campaigns and said, hey, we should turn these off. Any paid marketing right now through Facebook ads should be around how you're helping families through this time, what your state's saying about gatherings and things, which took a lot of work directly with Facebook because any ad that mentions coronavirus or COVID-19 is immediately being unapproved by Facebook. So it took manual review, which we had to submit account IDs and really work through Facebook to get a lot of our clients who wanted to get information out to the community. There's no way around the situation not mentioning COVID-19 or coronavirus in the text of the post or the video to manually get those things approved. So I think now we're at a point where this has kind of become the new normal for what we're in, and funeral homes can't ignore the fact that they have to market and be visible. So I want to read you a response to a negative comment on an ad that we had a funeral home send us, and they said, look, we have no idea how to, what type of reply to have, because what holds a lot of funeral homes back is the fear that one person is going to say something negative, while there's 300 other people commenting how positive the funeral home experience has been, how the funeral home's helping them through this time, serving their family. So we focus on that one negative comment. So I want to kind of read you the response that really kind of gave a great explanation of why the funeral home continues to market. So it may seem a poor timed coincidence, but numerous businesses, including healthcare providers and funeral homes, continue to advertise even when events such as a crisis occur, but not because of it. Of course, it is our hopes that our services are not needed as a direct result of this pandemic. However, we plan to remain a pillar of the pillar of the community and to families we serve by continuing to care for them during this time of need, even if that is a tumultuous one. We encourage our friends to continue following the guidelines of the CDC and the State Health Department. Trust that we are doing everything we can for our community during this time. So the funeral home still needs to be present. I mean, business still has to go on. We can't shut the lights off, close the doors, and be non-existent just because we deal in death care. So I think that any pre-need marketing message right now needs to be around the value of pre-need and what that means versus a hard sell, time to pre-need, now's the time. That obviously is going to generate a lot of negative feedback. But being able to have a counselor talk about the value of pre-need, being able to have a family that you're serving during this time that's willing to give a testimonial of how it's been so much easier dealing with this process because they pre-planned years ago. That's great content that can go out. I mean, let's be honest. We don't want to look at this in a very morbid scenario, but however, it's the line of business that we're in. And most funeral homes would say if they could go through a receiving line and have a conversation about pre-planning with every person in a receiving line, they'd sell more pre-need than ever before, because the most opportune time to have the discussion is when you're kind of in the process and thinking about death and your own mortality. That is now. People are home. There's, I'll say, stuck with family by force, and there's conversations that could be had where the funeral home could interject conversations and content around legacy that now starts to bring in the pre-need conversation. So not a direct hard selling message, that's not going to work, but being able to provide value in a conversation around pre-need and legacy and capturing a life story and planning. Those are things that can abstractly bring the conversation back to pre-planning and be valuable for the funeral home.
I think that's a great response and also suggestion, Ryan, because again, we're having nothing less than virtual conversations. And certainly, as of yesterday, we were given some government guidance that we could have significantly more deaths over the next couple of weeks. And that is a topic right now. I think that because of this pandemic, we're forced to have at least a thought process of, gosh, could this get me, and thoughts of mortality. And so I believe, as you just said and the other panelists have, that having a relevant content going out, how to prepare, what ifs, and just saying, hey, you know what, we're a funeral home and our job is to provide you information so you can make educated decisions. Let us know the questions that you have. Do you, if nothing else, get all of your affairs in order with your DD 214s, et cetera. And so I think that's fabulous. Guys, we're coming up on an hour, and that's pretty much what we pledged to have here. I'm going to ask each of you for a sort of a closing remark, and then we'll finalize this up. So we started with John. John, if you will, anything that you can share with us as we get ready to close down our webinar.
Yeah, as always, thanks guys for the opportunity to to get together and talk everything funeral related in some challenging times. So, as it relates to technology and marketing, one, look at what you're doing, and two, if you're not doing it, find help in which to get it. From a marketing perspective, it's very sensitive times, but there are real opportunities in terms of the different vehicles that you can do it. And not that it's about cost, but it could be about cost, and that there's some good conversations that you should have with your different outlets. And at a minimum, keep the conversation going, get out there and educate, and just make sure you get the word out to as many people as possible. I've always been a believer that, back to normal times, our goal is to make sure as many people as possible can attend our physical facilities and or services we are providing. So in absence of that, what can we do to educate consumers from an online perspective so that when we go back to the norm, that we're going to be able to accomplish that?
I agree. Thank you, John, for appearing and also sharing your background information as well as knowledge. Curtis, let's go to you for closing remarks.
Yeah, I think if you've been watching some of the other webinars going on this week, Jake Johnson, who's just also another legend in our industry, he's quoted a couple times now this week saying that crisis is a terrible thing to waste, and if I read Richard Branson's biography last year, and one of the things that he said, and I just looked it up like 2 seconds ago because I was like, I'm going to just read it because quoting I'm going to botch it. But he says, I found that a problem that is handled quickly and effectively will almost always produce more customer loyalty than when the original service was delivered satisfactorily. So here we are in this crazy time, and it's like, so I think if we can adapt, if funeral homes can adapt, if us as suppliers can adapt to provide awesome service to families in a time like this, it's going to create more customer loyalty than had they just come in and had a real smooth service on a normal day without a pandemic, and that's kind of my closing remark there. Really is like, this is a crazy time, but it's also a time for us to, revisit what we're doing as businesses and how can we make it better. And because things are so like just sloshing around right now, it's almost easier to make change when everything's changing, involuntarily. So, but I'm an optimist, and I'm excited to see, how we come out on the other side of this in 6 months. I think the industry is going to be in a better place.
It's no doubt. In fact, for a profession that's generally resistant to change, this has forced us to do better and change and adapt. Thank you. Welton, final remarks about what we should be doing right now?
Yes. So once again, really appreciate the opportunity. So what I would recommend you to do is to just Google your own brand name. After the call, just Google your own brand name. If you're ABC Funeral Home, just type in ABC Funeral Home. And from this little tiny device, and see what shows up on first page of Google. Are your hours set to 24/7, or is it set to 8 to 5, for example? After hours, people think you're actually closed, right? And also leverage Google Posts to let families know that you are still open. So when they Google your funeral home right now, it will show up as you're being opened. You're open right now. And make sure, follow that journey from there to your website. And what does the experience look like on your website? Is it easy to find your phone number? Things like that.
Thank you. And that's it's interesting because that Google, where you're positioning there, again, just on yourself, folks, this isn't magic just for the funeral business. Look, how do you behave on a daily basis? And if you're looking for something that doesn't show up in the first page, do you literally go down through several pages looking, or do you just bypass it and take the first ones? That's how important that it is. So Ryan, I'm going to get you to give your final remarks, please.
Absolutely. I want to answer a question from Joe Prey real quick. He just asked, what should we post on a Facebook grief support group? Should we post links to content, blog from our counselor, live stream our monthly support group? Yes, all of the above. Absolutely. So closing, look, this has been a wild and crazy 3 weeks, and there's a lot of great conversation that's came from this crisis and how we've come together and supported each other. And I fully believe the way that funeral homes respond in this moment, to echo what Curtis said, it will have lifelong lasting impressions in your community, and in your ability to serve maybe not on a national scale, but in a localized level. Funeral homes will be the focus and at the forefront of this in their communities. So it is imperative to be able to have that conversation, be transparent, be authentic, it's okay not to know what to say, and it's okay to tell a family that you don't know, and you'll figure it out. We need to kind of let down the guard of this fear that everyone is looking at us to say something negative. Haters are always going to hate, and it doesn't really matter. You're not going to please everyone, but the opportunity to help thousands versus irritate a handful, helping the thousands is far more valuable to you and your community than worrying about the one person that just doesn't get it. So I would just encourage funeral homes to take a look at how they're engaging at home as a consumer, and are they doing the same things where, Anthony Canick from NFDA just put in here, do the grandma test, ask your grandma to find your funeral home and search it. That's it. It's that simple to understand where your funeral home is positioned. So this is an opportunity to serve, and this is what you signed up to do. And part of that is being able to step back and take yourself out of a funeral director role and look at your business as the owner, and get creative in how you serve families and innovate. We have to. And look, we've had 11 different suppliers on and vendors in the profession over the last 3 days. Every single one of them is positioned to help your funeral home, your cemetery, your crematory, your pet business exceed the expectations of the families that you serve. Utilize that knowledge and the services that are available to step up the way that you serve your family. Now, look, you're created for greatness. There's greatness in every single one of us. And we're called to use those talents for good. Let's go do it.
I agree. And I don't think there's any of us in the profession that wouldn't lend a helping hand. So again, the point being, I think, Ryan, that you just shared, if you don't know, ask. Don't be afraid. And everyone is available to help each other to solve issues that were going on. Well, folks, we're going to close this up. I'm grateful to have Ryan, Welton, Curtis, and John along with us today. I've enjoyed this. I've learned quite a bit myself. And we're just grateful for everyone in the profession. Prayers out to you and your families. Folks, take care of yourself first. You're on the front lines out there. We admire what you do. And it's a blessing to be associated with a profession that we're involved with now.
Excellent. Jeff, the commander, thank you for leading us in this position today, in this discussion. And gentlemen, thank you for coming on. This has been phenomenal over the 3 days. It wouldn't be possible without all of you carving out a couple hours of your time each day to make it happen. At the same time, you're serving funeral homes, your businesses are having to adjust and go remote, and people are everywhere. So this was a big, even though it was an hour and a half of time, it was a huge commitment, and I'm appreciative of that. So to everyone watching, thank you. We appreciate your attention over the last 3 days. We will be emailing out a recording of all 3 sessions later this afternoon. And please reach out to our panelists. Look, they want to help.
Hey, Ryan.
Yes, sir.
Congratulations on the first virtual unconference. Extremely well done. And
thank you.
I know the panelists appreciate it, and certainly the attendees, but really, thank you very much.
I appreciate it. Thank you all for being a part of it. Wouldn't have happened without you. All right, let's sign off. The first virtual ever funeral conference is in the books. And look, if we were in San Antonio right now, like we wished that we were, we would be giving each other high fives and hugs and handshakes. So virtual knuckles to all of you. Appreciate it, and glad we could connect. So, all right, let's sign off. Later.
All right, take care, y'all.